There's an esoteric saying which is, as above, so below. We're going to speculate what is above, which is the sky, and below, which is our earth. As we have entered a new age in the 21st century, and we discover amazing new discoveries in the universe, and as we pay more attention to earth, it's indeed interesting the concept of as above, so below. My name is Agneta Borstein. I'm an astrologer, and I welcome you to this program, From the Sky to Earth. Today we're going to talk about relationships and astrology. There's a lot to astrology that we can kind of divide into different sections. There is symbols to it, so we're going to just try to see what actually happens. We deal with relationships just about every day. Of course, intimate relationships, co-workers. We go into a supermarket, we deal with people, friends, sometimes enemies. But we also see this concept about how much we learn through relationship. So we will start just to look at this blue thing about, of course, we deal with the 12 planets, 12 zodiac signs, sorry. So we divide them into different kind of modality as in elements. We know the 12 zodiac signs. We start off with the fire elements. They are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Most of the time, they are fired up, inspirational. They are very energetic, sometimes moving too fast, and sometimes a little restless. But with these elements, they also achieve. They are outgoing and often very enthusiastic. When we deal with the air elements, they are more, the Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. There is a more talkative energy, social. They like to be out with people. There is a certain fun and brightness about them, but they can also change often or a little bit aloof. So Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are the air elements. The earth elements, of course, is Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. It is a more practical connotation to the earth elements. Practical, sometimes cautious, very dependable, and very patient. They can be leaning a little bit towards more materialistic side of life, which could be okay too. Little stubborn, especially when we come to the Taurus quality, and a little bit lazy. But there is that two sides to every sign and every coin of the zodiac. The water elements are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. There is a more sensitive and compassionate part of the water elements. They are sympathetic, very nurturing, and sometimes just a little too overly emotional. And even though sometimes detachment can be beneficial, we also have that way to not showing the overly emotional part of us. So those are the basic. There's a lot of things to that we try not to show you the symbols because then you will get scared. But looking at astrology, perhaps at other segments that are through Nutmeg Television, as an astrology, we always have certain passions. We might be connected to certain fire elements, or we have our specialty. My specialty has become the moon's nodes. In astrology, we say that when they connect either the sun and the moon, then they connect also on a deeper source between the moon's nodes. As we know, the moon travels around the earth as a satellite, which then they travel around the sun, which we know takes 1 year. So there is the ascendant and the descendant node that makes us say that where do we stand in relation to if we're going to find a perfect relationship or partnership. Family also, of course, is relationships. So every time I do this program, I like to take just a little bit of the myth. So the myth about how we interact with people is also to be honest about mistakes in the past. So this myth here is the churning of the waters. In this myth here, we have the demons and the gods and the goddesses trying to purify difficulties in our lives that we might have been encountered, and we always look for the future in positive ways. So I am always fascinated about the moon's nodes and my role as an astrologer. And so in that process, when Vishnu, which is the god who rules this birth of the whole earth, if you will, because we have myth in every society, so Vishnu does notice that in the process of the demons, the snake Vasuki is coiled around the earth, which Vishnu, the god, oversees. And of course, they're going to partake in the soma, which is the elixir of life. And that can't be. So he takes his discs and cut that snake in half, which then becomes the birth of the north node and the south node. They're always connected, but we know in our subconscious there's always something going on with that, what was and what we look into in the future. So the north node becomes what we strive to become. Attachment, the power, it rules the head and the mind, and also again materialistic side of life. And we look into the future when we look at the north node. There's always that hope. It's a more masculine energy to the north node, the way of perceiving as power. And here is an image from the Hindu myth about the north node. There is that kind of the god shows power by sitting and being born actually into the lioness energy. The south node on the other side is what we let go of. We might bring things in our subconscious that we become aware of, and it's an opportunity for liberation and not allowing limitation to say we're all liberating to express, to be artistic, to be in a perfect relationship, also maybe to get rid of those in the past and be happy for what we have become. And so it is an indicator of enlightenment to be happy every day that we are here still. And so the past is also important to connect into, kind of get rid of that churning process and allow that to be part of our personal growth and also understanding who we have become. It is the feminine power that is more the softness, about being able to surrender. And the poverty, of course, is those in enlightenment. We don't have to be poor, but it is also that part of realizing that is not always striving to the north node that will give us wealth as far as money, but is the wealth of enlightenment and understanding the daily in interaction with our lives and relationships. So that gives us an idea about the elements and the interaction. You might know your sun sign, and if not, you can look up on the internet. There is so much on the internet now, but you can look under your internet under www.astrolabe.com, and you can find more about your sun, the moon, and the north or south node. Now we're going to take a look at, and that's the south node, little ugly, little things that has to be through little chicken parts in the face. And we're going to look at a very famous couple. Matter of fact, the way I understand is one of the most powerful couples in Hollywood. You know the story, or maybe not, how they have at this point adopted 3 children. They have 3 on their own. And of course, one set is twins, and they also the little girl. After 10 years of figuring out how many fights they would do or not, it has been a very stormy relationships, but they are continuing. I think a little bit more or less in the news nowadays. It is an interesting aspect to look at astrology, as we do, of course, look up under events and not always happy events, but we do want to have the relationships in astrology on a happy connotation. So they have been married now for about a year. And it's not too scary, but we're going to look at Angelina Jolie's chart. And to make it just a little more simple, I have added on from the symbols, written out the planet, the name of the planets. So we start off that Angelina Jolie, she is a Gemini, and this is the symbol of the sun, and that's the Gemini, and she also have the Mercury in Gemini. And of course Mercury belongs to Gemini, so we know that part of perhaps her being changeable. I think a little hard time growing up, being the daughter of a well-known actors and all that Hollywood style. By the time she was 30, there was a few marriages, and we always find that style of living could be challenging for her. Now, what we use in astrology is very much about the ascendant. That's how we see the people. We might hide behind the scene of the chart, but the ascendant is how we look at the world. It does change every 2 hours. So at the birth of Angelina Jolie, she has a Cancer ascendant, which is that water sign. And right on her ascendant is that Venus, the goddess, that's 28 degrees. Her ascendant is 28, based on an accurate birth time. And so when we then look at her, whether we are drawn to her fascinating life, being an United Nations ambassador, being kind of all over the world, and she does help. She does give some of her money to charitable organization, and one of them is also, of course, the children that she's very committed to. And there is the Saturn too in Cancer, so I think that she does have that position about her. Also, she represents femininity, as we know. She has had some controversial alteration and also preventing cancer. She does have quite a few tattoos on her, and she does actually have all her children's longitude and latitude, which makes me believe that she accepts astrology. So thank you, Angelina, allowing us to look at your chart. But on her shoulder, she has all those tattooed on her shoulder. And so that's the basic part, but we get deeper into the 9th house, which that is the fire. That's her moon sign. Jupiter and Mars together. Mars in itself is a little feisty, it's energy, it comes forth as I am strong. The moon, of course, I'm fire, I'm always very important. And I also would like to say that Jupiter together with moon makes her very opinionated. It falls in the 9th house. We divide them into our zodiac, 12 zodiac sign, we divide into 12 different sectors. And the 9th house is actually foreign countries. It's also the house of the mind. We travel with the mind. So I feel that part of her just being worldwide, I don't know if they're ever going to come back and live to America, it's not my business, but it's also part of how she sees the personal growth of her as now being a married woman almost 1 year. Now the 5th house is the house of children, and we find this moon's node situated in the axis of the house of children. I think that she might not have thought about it and she realized, I do want children. That is part of the 9th house, and that's the fire coming into how that really connects to the sun and the moon, no matter what she went through to grow into the woman she has become. And in that 9th house, and going very well to the children's house, she had started to adopt before she got married to Brad Pitt, and that's a passion for children and to help them. So when it comes to karma, fate and destiny is the same thing. I think children was destined for her to have children. 6, and there might be some more when I looked at the transits, which is changes. We don't know that. The Neptune, this planet here, might fall into a place that sometimes she just doesn't know what to do with her brew, but I'm sure she's a lovely mother and she does seem to very much care. And then we will go into, just in general, see this the moon being very strong, Mars being very strong, as we saw her in astrological chart, is very busy how she expresses herself and her mind and the energy around her. When we get to Brad Pitt's chart, it's, of course, they're going to connect, but it's very different in this sector. He is a Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, and that would be very well to her Aries planets because they are in a trine and harmonious fire. There is a lot of energy going on. And he also has Jupiter in Aries, which we remember then that connects that they are actually friends as well. So then this Mars, Mercury, Moon, Venus, all are in the sign of Capricorn, which is an earth sign. So I think that no matter what relationship we choose, we might need somebody to calm us down. You know, he seems to be in his wild, they all actor and actress. What do we know how to live that way? But he does have that very foundation to carry all this responsibility that he might have asked for. What he does have in the nodal axis that we talked about is that he comes in to be stronger than maybe she's always, paying attention to me, but he's solid. And he's also is born with this Jupiter is in the 4th house with a solid foundation from his childhood, from his parents, so the karmic link comes in that he does have this subtle, he might be quiet and then he just really speaks up and perhaps calm Angelina Jolie down just a little bit. His ascendant is Sagittarius. And so then when we see his dominant planets, we again see Jupiter. That does help his way of being practical and realistic. They fall into the house for money, and again, we don't know what's going on, but he has a solidity in him that I think helps their marriage. When we look at the two of them together, and don't be scared of this, but we find the connection of his node, which is then, have I met you before sometime? If we don't have to go into prior lifetimes, we just sometimes meet people on our path that we feel just a little bit more connected to. So with her, Venus, and that connection could be that they just instinctively know when they did that film with Mr. and Mrs. Smith and all the different violence connotation in there. But we also see the Venus opposing Angelina's Venus in the astrological term. There's so much of his Capricorn, but opposite attracts. They also attract, she is a Gemini and he is a Sagittarius, so that attracts. The way they communicate is also very strong and beneficial. So there is that when we look at a relationship, we can speculate, but we also can be very practical by looking at just that interaction of the elements that we went through. When we look at some more things in this, we were talking about the friendship, and I also think there has been a lot of healing with them. There is a new planet, Chiron, that does go into, here, look at that, how fancy that is. I didn't know I had an error there. So then we can really understand me, huh? The Chiron and Mars, there's been a lot of fights, but I do know that perhaps they are calming down just a little bit. And I also find that Angelina's Saturn in Cancer also teaches him to be honest to all the different avenues that we need to kind of accept when we have the different elements, because it doesn't go this way. Oh, so you're a Gemini, you must like another air sign. Because when we see our own personal charts, there is just much more involved in just the sun sign, but it is a beginning. So again, if you have joined us for my program From the Sky to Earth, and if you don't know your sun sign, your moon sign, or your chart in general, there is so much on the internet, and you can look under astrolabe.com. We also have a great society in the state of Connecticut. Actually, is one of the world's oldest and active astrological group. We meet once a month in Wethersfield, and that is www.myasc.org. And that's another way that you can dwell more into astrology or come back to visit our show at Nutmeg Television. So when we then look at, there is, by the way, a little, can I look at that? Let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 children. We think it's 6, but it's just interesting to see how not just famous people, but ordinary people like you and I, we have a tool that we might use just because there is a tool inside. That's what counts. Is really, astrology could be a tool, but it's really the heart that counts. And I do feel that with these connections that they have astrologically, there is a heart connection. There is a connection on many levels that because the Gemini Sagittarius are opposite. They have fire trine that help each other out when need to be taking care of 6 children, and that in that they do have a humanitarian aspect to them, and I do believe that they still out, doing their work as not being lazy. And when they got married last year, it was quite obvious. I mean, they got married first in California, and then went to France and all that other things that comes with legality. So that I think they both have realized also their weakness and strength to be able to stay together many more years, and hopefully so. We could talk more about their interaction, but I think just in general, when you see a person, Venus, the Moon, Mercury, and Mars, they're all personal planets. So with an opposition of Angelina's Cancer planets, and when they come into that much energy as far as Earth, we do know that the element then help him out to be able to calm her down, and also in his own way realizing that he is more steady than maybe we noticed in the news at first. So if one of you know that, for example, that what happens here because of the Cancer, his Capricorn, they do square each other, which then you might say, if you know a little bit, that's a challenge. A square is a challenge, but they're also very good for personal growth. And I think this chart shows that they have interacted, and still do actually, and find that interaction between the fire of Angelina and the earth of Brad Pitt does help each other. So we should not discriminate with astrology, which is quite easy. We have some good jokes about all the different sun sign. But astrology is basically a tool for a self-knowledge and not be set in stone, but to allow the growth to integrate in practical terms. And in that, we hope they stay married for a long time. And we also would like to welcome you back, because in the future, in the program here, From the Sky to Earth, we're actually going to go through some basic fundamental zodiac sign, planets, and the houses. And there's also archives at Nutmeg Television's archive in their new webpage that you can get more information about other shows and other planetary cycles. So I hope you have enjoyed this program about relationships and astrology. My name is Agneta Borstein, and you can reach me at www.agnetaborstein.com. And we do want to thank Nutmeg Television for allowing us to bring unusual, sometimes contradictive topics. But we do thank you, and please come and visit again. Thank you.